All right, everybody. How we doing? Happy Wednesday. Everybody, welcome. I'm Dr. Roney. Good to see you all tonight. Um, I want to welcome you always if you've been with us before, and then want to welcome you if you're new to the class. Want to say I appreciate you all coming. I love Wednesday nights. I say that all the time. I love teaching and helping you all out. So tonight's class is going to be on detoxification. So we talk heavily about the detox process. We talk heavily about doing detox, whether it's baths or saunas or some of the standard process or metagenics or whatever it might be, some of those detox support systems. So we want to make sure that, or I like to make sure that you can understand the importance of why we do these things. So tonight's going to be on going over all the chemicals and toxins in the environment. We're going to go over some of the liver science and understanding what they call phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathways. And then I'll correlate that with how it ties into chronic disease, specifically cancer. So I think it'll be helpful. It's one of the main, I think, causes as we look at the pillar 4, which are the causes of cancer. I think, toxins and the exposure, as you'll see, is just overwhelming today in today's world. So it's a biggie, right? All these causes are big, but toxin overload just seems to be at an epidemic level. So we'll go through that. As always, if you're new to the class, I go over a review. So I like to make sure that we understand the big picture, right? And the plan. And, as I go through this, I said this before, but as I go through this, the details of liver detox, for example, it allows me personally to understand the level of the details as to what we're trying to accomplish, right? So again, we always compare the medical paradigm and the fact that it's chemo, radiation, and surgery, which I always say, I preface it by saying that might not be the worst thing, but if it's the only thing, it's very incomplete. So if we're looking at a 20 or a 30 chapter book, the chemo, radiation, and surgery is really only one chapter. Now, it could be a good chapter, but it's short-sighted in the sense that there's 29 other chapters that could be applied to that in order to maximize your upside, right? So when we have a good plan in life, and again, I know I'm redundant each week with saying this, but when we have a good plan in life, the one thing it can do for us is it can increase our upside and it can mitigate our downside. So if we're only using the one chapter of the book, which again, may be a necessary chapter, we're really not getting the full effect and looking, at the plan itself going, I feel good that we're leaving no rock unturned. So when we do this class and the conversation that we have about cancer, what we want to do is give you the other 29 chapters. So again, if you're new to this, it is the plan that makes the biggest difference, right? It's the collective plan. It's trying to leave no rock unturned. And I do this correlation. I've done it in previous classes. So, as I'm going through, like I said, the details of just liver detox, this one thing in a plan that's this big, it makes me realize, I guess, how inadequate we kind of are in our healthcare system. In the last few years, we know what's been going on in the world with this pandemic, right? And it mirrors that quite a bit in the sense that what we were given as a nation or as a world as to what we could do with this virus is probably woefully inept, right? I'll use that term. It's inept. It's ignorance in the sense that if you really do the research and get woke on health and the human body, you realize that a virus, for the most part, right, is self-limiting. What that means is if my body's working really, really well and has a high level of immune function, my gut's good, my liver's detoxing, I don't have a lot of things overwhelming my immune system, that if I am exposed to a virus, my body should be able to overcome that virus, right? So the stats on the virus, and it correlates, so I'll make this comparison, shows that most of the people that unfortunately, and I mean no insensitivity with this at all, but most of the people that passed, high percentage, very high percentage, had comorbidities, right? They had diabetes and heart disease, and they were somewhat unhealthy, right? Now, there's exceptions to that rule. Trust me, I understand that. But the reality is, if we went back and looked at how we handled this thing, and we did, say, on the news each night, they did one piece on what vitamin D can do, and what vitamin C can do, and what zinc can do, and what healthy eating can do, and what exercise can do, and what good sleep and water intake, and all these just really somewhat simple approaches to our health, what that could have done to the human body and many people's bodies to where they were better protected is, I would say, almost criminal that they didn't do that. That's my opinion, right? I'll give you my opinion on that. We should have been teaching people every single day how to get healthier. We should have been looking at the work that they did with ivermectin, and they did with hydroxychloroquine, and that combo of hydroxychloroquine and zinc and the Z-Pak for a co-infection of bacterial pneumonia, right? If we looked at the doctors that were using these things and the success they were having, and then implemented those strategies, and at least let everybody know, right, that these things existed, plus all the health related things that they could have done, I think we could have done a way, way better job. And I feel that that's inarguable, right? In my opinion. Cancer is the same way, gang. We have this system that's antiquated, right? The conventional model, it's antiquated. And when you really get woke and do your research, it's driven by things, right? There's a biasness there. I won't get into it. The point I'll make is we have to understand the same thing with conventional cancer care, right? It's a system that was designed years ago that says, okay, we're gonna, chemo, radiation, or surgery, and that's it. And if you're awakened or woke, I call it, you understand that there's way more to the story, right? I know I'm being redundant, but I think that's critical to make that comparison so you understand how much more there could be done. And again, when I get into these, when I'm doing my research and just, getting my review going for these classes, it just makes me realize, my gosh, people should know about this stuff. People should know about the things that they could do for their body to improve their overall chances of getting better, but you're not going to hear it over here. So again, that's part of the class and these conversations, is to make you more aware so you become empowered, right? And when you become empowered, you have the ability to kind of calm down, and you feel like, wow, I'm hitting pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, pillar 4, which we'll talk about, and I'm hitting them really, really hard. What that does is give you confidence in what you're doing. And confidence is what creates better outcomes. A plan, a confidence in the plan, allows you less anxiety, less stress, and allows you the ability to maximize your upside. Risk management, isn't this what life is all about? It's figuring out how to mitigate my downside and maximize my upside. So when we talk about these 4 pillars, and something that it's very near and dear to my heart, because when I took over, I wanted a way that I could articulate a plan to patients that made sense to me. The 4 pillars was it. So I'm going to share the screen. Excuse me. Let's go through those and start, getting you understanding a little bit better, if you're new to the class and the conversation, on what all that means. So when we go through the class here, and we talk about, again, the 4 pillars, we want to make sure that we're understanding the 30,000 foot view, but also dialing in on the details. Okay. So every week I go over who we are, 30,000 square foot clinic. Half of it is a wellness center, half of it is an integrative cancer center. And it's in Irvine, California, really nice area. Over the course of the last year or two, the systems that we put into place I think we've done a really good job of making sure we're dotting I's and crossing T's. We have advocates in place. I get involved in the care to make sure we're quarterbacking it. So we're dotting I's and crossing T's as much as we can so things don't fall through the crack. Are we perfect? No. Are we working for perfection? We absolutely are. But I think it's important that if you come here, that we have the right people, we have the right systems, and we're really trying hard to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So, and there's systems designed to do that. So let's talk about the 4-pillar approach, right? Number one, it's the testing. So comprehensive testing, early detection obviously is critical. And let me just say that the class is designed for really 3 segments or demographics. Number one, it is designed for people looking to prevent chronic disease like cancer, right? Number 2, it's for people that have cancer that are looking to heal from it and maximize their upside and reduce the reoccurrence rate. That's a biggie. And then the third one is if you've already had cancer and you don't want it to return. So the class is for each one of you watching this. Prevention, if you have it, and then you want to avoid reoccurrence. All these things are relevant. So all the testing, not all of it, but most of the testing and pillar 2, 3, and 4 are all relevant to be able to do that. Okay. So the comprehensive testing, advanced treatments, immune boosting, and addressing the root causes. Okay. So that's the 4-pillar approach. Let's get into a little bit of number one. So number one, the RGCC test, we talk about it all the time, but it's a test that can give you the chemo agents that you're most sensitive to, your natural agents you're most sensitive to. It can give you your what they call repurposed drugs. This is from a book from Jay McClellan, How to Starve Cancer. So it can give you those that you're most sensitive to, and then it could give you your circulating tumor cell count. And so if we get those, we're going to be able to individualize your care much better. Remember, comparing to the other paradigms here, that we're going to be able to individualize your care much, much better. So that testing is important. Something like nagalase, I talk about it all the time. It's an enzyme that's secreted by the cancer cell, that if that cancer cell is secreting that and it's elevated, it's blocking your own immune system, your macrophages especially, from attacking, from being able to attack the cancer cell. So it blocks your own immune system. It's like a self-defense mechanism. So if that's high, we need to know about it. We need to bring that down. Again, another thing to help you fight the cancer, right? PHI, if that's elevated, we know it's anaerobic, right? It's in a anaerobic state or a low oxygen state. So if we do see that, we want to increase your oxygen. We do ozone or hyperbaric or things like that in order to do it. D-dimer is one of those where it can tell us if the cancer is moving. So if that's elevated, we're going to do things to bring that down. And of course, your cancer antigens that we can look at. So it's not one test. It's a conglomeration of all these tests, plus the scans and the tests that you've already had done, right? So that pillar 1 will allow us to get to a very individualized, comprehensive plan that includes what we call pillar number 2. So pillar number 2, with the testing, we can get to how to kill the cancer cells, how to starve the cancer cells, we can get to the oxygenation of the body, and we can get to alkalizing the body. So that's pillar number 2. Kill, starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize. Now, in the kill phase, we can do everything or recommend everything from conventional chemo, radiation, and surgery. And then here, we can do things like fractionated chemo, which is lower dose of the chemo, of the 100% dose, maybe 10%, 20%. And what we do with it, and we're going to do a whole class on this coming up, but we bring the blood sugar down, maybe into your therapeutic range of 40 to 50. And once it's in that range, we then infuse the chemo agents that we found from the RGCC test that you're most sensitive to. Remember, getting more specificity and individualized care. And we infused it while your blood sugar is low. What that does is it almost, the cancer cell is almost starving at that point. So it acts as a vacuum and it pulls the chemo agents into the cell, thus targeting the cell more and leaving a lot of the surrounding tissue intact. So if that's what it's doing and it's targeted and we're using the chemo agents, we're just starting to, again, have less invasiveness, but yet same outcome, and not having hair loss and nausea and things like that for the most part, right? So still getting what we need to get done, just less invasive. Okay, so that's the low dose that we do here. That's the most invasive thing that we do here from a kill phase of the cancer, right? If we're starving it, like we talked about, we can do repurposed drugs to block the pathways that feed the cancer, and that could be gained, that knowledge could be gained from the RGCC test. And then, of course, if PHI is up, HBOT, hyperbaric, we could do ozone, etc. Right? So within that starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize phase, we want to create an environment that the cancer cells don't thrive in, like acidity and low oxygen, they thrive. So get it alkaline and boost the oxygen, and then go after the cells directly and block them. That's the best way I could put it. So in pillar number 2, there's actually 4 things that we work on doing within pillar number 2. So hopefully you could start to see, as we put these pillars together, you're like, wow, we have conventional chemo, radiation, or surgery, and then we can do more testing that gets us more specific, and then we can do less invasive things, and we can do more than just chemo, radiation, and surgery, right? Pillar number 3 is boosting the immune system. So no matter who comes in here or what you're doing, you should be boosting your immune system. There's everything from vitamin C and mistletoe and things, supplements like vitamin D and your omega-3s and your vitamin C's and so forth, right? Zincs and all these different things that can help boost your immune system and just keep it strong. What happens with cancer a lot of times is we become catabolic. Catabolic means that the body breaks down. Well, if we're doing, especially with chemo, the immune system breaks down. So if we can keep the immune system up, we don't go through as much catabolic state, which is breakdown. We can still build while you're going through chemo, radiation, or surgery, right? So no matter what, we certainly want to be boosting the immune system. And again, going back over to the conventional model, not even thought of, right? Not even thought of. Okay, and then pillar 4, which most of this class is on, or these classes or conversation the last several weeks have been on. It's the root causes. So now we have to peel back the layers of the onion. And if we could peel back the layers of the onion, we're going to be able to figure out what caused the cancer in the first place, right? Is it inflammation that's created by things like poor gut health, poor eating? Is it chemicals, which we'll talk about tonight, and toxins? How about infections like bacteria, viral infections like Epstein-Barr? How about, parasitic infections in the gut, or mold infections or fungal infections like mold and candida, right? All those things are relevant, plus heavy metals. How do they factor in, right? How does stress factor in? What happens with your cortisol? And what happens to your hormone balance and your acidity and your immune suppression with stress, right? All these things matter. My exposure to electromagnetic fields matters today, right? The point I'll make, gang, is there are reasons why you have cancer. The evidence is clear that very few cancers are actually genetics, in the sense that we could have these genes, but there's a saying, genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So even though, and I always use this analogy or example, Angelina Jolie, I remember years ago, she had the gene, right? Her mother had it, and then she had the gene. I think it was the BRCA2. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, the point I'll make is she, before having breast cancer, had a double mastectomy. Now, the reality is she was only about 30%. There's only about a 30% chance that she would develop breast cancer based on that gene. If lifestyle was really, really strong, she understood these root causes, went through and looked at them, could have potentially not had the double mastectomy as prevention, right? And I only use that. I'm not judging whether she, good or bad if she did that. I'm just using that as an example of the genetic factors that they play less of a factor than I think a lot of people think. So then we have to get into some of these other things that I mentioned as far as what's happening in the planet today or in America. We're just overwhelmed with too much stuff. And that's really what it comes down to. And then our immune system gets triggered pretty highly. And then we get free radical damage. We get oxidative stress. We get into this oxidative stress damaging the DNA of our cells and the genes of our cells. And then those cells no longer can go through apoptosis or cell death. So they replicate out of control. And that's cancer. So if we go way upstream, we start looking at, well, what's causing free radical damage? Well, it's something we'll talk about tonight. And these causes, it's toxins and chemicals and infections and heavy metals, and it's poor gut health, and it's the foods that we eat, and it's the lack of exercise, and all these different things. Now, across the board, I'll have some people that come in and say, I've been healthy my whole life, but I still got cancer. Well, define health, right? Is it because you exercised and ate right and did things like that? But maybe they had chronic infections. Maybe they had chronic exposure to toxins. Maybe they had, right? There's something that had to be going on that they're missing, right? I feel like I'm extremely healthy, but I know things when I go through this, I have to start looking a little bit deeper at too, just to make sure. So anyway, sorry, a little itchy nose. Anyway, that's your 4-pillar approach. It's doing the testing right. It's doing the pillar number 2, kill, starve, oxidate, alkalize phase. It's immune boosting. And then it's really peeling back the layers of the onion as to what may have caused the cancer. So in pillar 3 and 4, if you're preventing cancer, pillar 3 and 4 is definitely the answer, right? If you're currently going through cancer, we have to do all 4 pillars. I had a patient the other day that came in, and I hear this a lot, that they're doing one specific thing, right? And this patient was doing one of the diets that was out there, and that's how she was going after the cancer. And I want to make a point here that there's very rarely a smoking gun or a silver bullet, I should say, right? There's very rarely one thing that you should be doing and saying, this is going to cure my cancer. If we see stage 3s and 4s, my eyes tell me that you're going to need something more potent or aggressive in the treatment in order to heal from that. I understand there's books and a lot of books written on healing cancer naturally and things like that. And trust me, I'm one of the most health-oriented natural practitioners out there. It's my belief system. But my eyes tell me that when it gets to a certain point, it might need something more aggressive within pillar number 2, like a chemo, radiation, or surgery, or a low-dose chemo or something like that. It's just reality, gang, right? It's just the way it is. I don't know, I say it is what it is. But the point I'll make is, even if you're going through any of those things, there's so many other things that you could do to potentially help yourself, okay? So those are the 4 pillars. The root causes, we listed here. I love this slide because, I mean, my goodness, it goes, if you look at everything, genetics and diabetes and lifestyle, weakened immunity and poor diet, and macronutrients. Macronutrients are your carbs, proteins, and fats, and your vitamins and minerals, and smoking and alcohol and toxins and acidity and drugs and stress. My goodness, right? Like all this stuff can be a part of our lives on a daily basis, creating that free radical oxidative stress process, which then damages these cells that are supposed to be killing off dead and or old and damaged cells, thus creating, this bad cells that replicate. That's cancer, unfortunately. So all these different things, again, are very relevant in that process. All right. So what we're going to talk about a lot tonight is the toxicity part of things, right? So if I'm looking at this thing, whoops, what happened there? If I'm looking at toxicity and the amount of toxins now, I want to go through and make I'll talk about epigenetics, but I want to make a blanket statement. And the blanket statement is, once you see this, the amount of toxins that are in our environment today is unreal. There's a slide that I'll present in just a second, that it is, I think 80,000 chemicals have been man-made chemicals since World War II are now in our environment. 80,000 of them, right? And we're wondering why our rates of chronic disease are going up, right? 80,000, that's unbelievable. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. But the concept of epigenetics, right? This is when you read this, an organism grows and develops orchestrated chemical reactions, activate and deactivate parts of the genome. at strategic times in specific locations, right? That's the nerdy explanation, right? But that's the scientific explanation. Basically, what epigenetics is what they call gene expression. So if I have we all have genes and we all have mutated genes, right? If these genes mutate and start to express themselves, so gene expression is really what happens. And I'll use the example of MTHFR. It's one of the genes that we test that if the genes are mutated and there's maybe a double mutation on one of the genes, you're going to have a problem with the pathways that gene orchestrates, right, or controls. So in this case, methylation is kind of like energy producing cycles, detox producing cycles, etc. So we could have some problems. We can have anxiety. We could be sensitive. We could have a sensitivity reactions to things, etc. if my MTHFR gene is mutated. Now, this is just an example. And so in that case, I call that very upstream. So if I have a mutated gene, I've got to kind of get that right before I start working on the rest of the body, because that's like the mouth of the river, if that makes sense, right? It's the head of the river. If that's wrong or mutated and expressing itself, the rest of the flow of the river is going to be affected, right? So we have to start upstream, they call it. Everything downstream could be affected. So when we start to test these genes, and for example, the MTHFR gene, we can start to understand what needs to be done in order to help it. So in that case, methylfolate, which is B9, and methylcobalamin, which is methylated B12, are needed. Just a couple things that might be needed in order to make that pathway work better. And when it works better, then you detox better. And you might have better regulation of certain pathways that will help you feel better, as an example, right? So again, epigenetics is the gene expression. What we could do, and there's a great book, I wanted to mention this, I didn't put on the slides, but there's a great book, and the book is called Dirty Genes. And Dr. Ben Lynch is somebody that I followed for years that wrote a book, Dirty Genes. He highlights the 7 genes that are probably most relevant in his opinion, and talks about those, and then talks about if these genes are upregulated or downregulated, what the symptoms can look like. And the fact that if they are dirty, we have to kind of clean them up to make sure that the body works better. So that's a good book that I would highly recommend. Again, it's called Dirty Genes by Dr. Ben Lynch. So that's a really good one. So anyway, epigenetics, we're going to get into in probably a couple weeks or so, and I'll really break down this whole gene mutation thing. They call it genotype and phenotype, and the expression of those genes. We'll go through different genes. We'll explain it a little bit better, what the symptoms are if these gene mutations are occurring. But as it relates to this class, sometimes these certain genes affect the ability of your body to detox. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so 5 types of toxins: chemical, biological, physical, radiation, and behavioral toxins, right? So let's see here. Where are we? Okay, so chemical toxicity. What makes a chemical toxic? It's really the ability of it to create a harmful effect on the body. So they could strike a single cell, a group of cells, the whole system, or the entire body. It just depends, honestly, on the amount of chemical toxicity that is going on in the body and the exposure. So anytime we're talking about toxins, gang, there's 2-part equation. Number 1, how much exposure have I had? And number 2, does my liver have the ability to detoxify these toxins? Okay, so that's a big, a biggie for sure. Industrial toxicology. So these are industrial poisons that happen when a person comes in contact or breathes the toxic waste, come from mines, mills, factories, things like that. You kind of get, this is a great picture because you kind of get that idea. So there's, again, because of the manufacturing boom that's taken place, these toxins are in the air. I mean, they try to regulate it as much as possible, but they're kind of everywhere, right? So neurotoxicity, we always talk about, we see a lot of patients with neurodegenerative issues. and the toxins basically get stuck in the brain, and they get stuck in the synapses, and now you can't send impulses from one neuron to another because these toxins are getting in the way. So it can damage the cells and the nerve. So the most sensitive organ in the body is a toxic induced reduction is in the brain. So it's a big deal. Okay. Now PET scans, right? And PET brain scans, I should say. Before and after PET brain scans of a neurological Lyme patient, right, who recently came to the clinic. This is from Spinagle Wellness. So Dr. Spinagle of Florida is very, very good with toxins and Lyme disease, right? So I follow him. One of our IT/marketing guys that helps with us with marketing and put together all this stuff worked side by side with Dr. Spinagle. So he helps us a lot with understanding this stuff. So what you see, is basically the toxic load on the brain starts to create changes on the MRIs. And when we start cleaning up the toxic load, the brain it's like clouds in the way of the sun. The brain can start working a lot better if that happens. So you get major percentage if we can identify the toxins and then we can remove them from the system. So I know this isn't, this is cancer, so we're going to tie that in. But I wanted to throw that in there because when we see dementias and Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative changes, right, the first thing I want to look at is the toxicity levels in the brain. So heavy metals, right? We know we look at mercury and lead and cadmium and arsenic and all these different high metals, heavy metals that can occur. And when they're in the body, they're going to act, whether it's a toxin or a heavy metal, it's going to act like a foreign invader. And if we have too many foreign invaders in our body, the immune system is constantly going to go after them. And when the immune system is constantly going after them, we get elevated inflammation. And when we get elevated inflammation, we get more free radical damage. We get more free radical damage, more oxidative stress, right? With more oxidative stress, more damage to the cell's DNA. And that's big picture, gang, that's what all this is about, is to reemphasize how many toxins we have in our environment and how detrimental they are to our system and how they create a chronic disease like cancer. So acute poisoning, I don't see much, right? But I always put it in there: confused, numbness, feeling sick, things like that. Chronic is what we typically see, where they've had an exposure for a long time. They're weak, they're tired, achy joints and muscles. Really, chronic toxic exposure is going to create chronic fatigue syndrome without question, right? They're going to be tired all the time. They're going to be achy. They're going to be sore. A lot of our patients that come in have a history of being tired and sore and achy and autoimmune-like, right? So all these things that I'm talking about as far as chemicals and toxins and infections and so forth will not only cause cancer eventually, but it can certainly create the autoimmune profile as well. All right, so biological toxicity, any toxic substance produced by microorganisms, plants, or animals. They're produced by bacteria, fungi, protozoa, plants, reptiles, you name it, right? They include metabolites of living organisms, degradation products of non-living organisms, and those materials rendered toxic by the metabolic activity of microorganisms, right? So they're everywhere, right? They're everywhere. Physical toxicity are substances that, due to their physical nature, interfere with biological processes, right? Physical toxins, coal dust, asbestos fibers, finely divided silicon dioxide, all of which ultimately can be fatal if inhaled at high levels. But these are low levels that are chronically with us. So, and then radiation, right? We all know that one. Acute radiation sickness is characterized by nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, malaise, rapid heartbeat, etc. But the chronic radiation is just overexposure to the EMFs, electromagnetic fields. We'll get into ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. I'm going to do a whole class on EMFs and talk about radiation being ionizing, which these are the ones that when they did studies long ago, they said, yes, radiation, nuclear fallout, things like that are 100% ionizing and damaging the DNA of the cell. Not to get too into this, but the I guess the controversy is these non-ionizing radiation, or EMFs, which is, Wi-Fi as an example, computers, TVs, appliances, things like that. And they'll say, no, they're not damaging to the cell or they're not cancer causing. But the problem is, in my opinion, and I'll get to this in another class, my opinion is it's the overload. We're just overloaded with too much non-ionizing radiation as well. So anyway, but this is another radiation toxicity, is another chemical that we want to be aware of. So radiation and breast cancer, I wanted to throw these in here. The more x-rays a woman is exposed to in the higher dose, the greater risk of breast cancer, right? Now, let's talk about why. And this isn't just breast cancer, it's cancer throughout the entire body, but we put breast cancer in there because it's so prevalent. If I have exposure to the radiation, and radiation contributes to free radicals, and free radicals contribute to oxidative stress, and oxidative stress contributes to the damage to the DNA of the cells, the genes of the cells that are supposed to allow these cells to die off because they're old or damaged. And because of the oxidative stress and the damage to the genes, they don't do that. So they replicate out of control. So the radiation really causes a lot of oxidative stress, which damages the ability of the cells when they're old or damaged to die. And they don't die, they replicate. So that's where it is. I mean, it all stems back from free radical damage and oxidative stress. So that's why, right? So girls who are exposed to radiation in the bombing of Hiroshima have double the risk of breast cancer, right? So interferes with mitochondrial function associated with inflammation, lactic acid production. As carbon dioxide goes down, lactic acid goes up, right? So that triggers inflammatory mediators and contributes to fibrocystic tissues. So within fibrosis, there's an increased risk of tumor formation. So the bottom line is radiation can cause inflammation in the body. It's unclear how long the effects last. So when we know somebody's going in for radiation of any kind, x-rays, CAT scan, having to do actual radiation, we want to make sure that we have them on, there's a product called C60. That's a good olive oil-based binder. We have them on superoxide dismutase. We recommend our Epsom salt baths. We recommend infrared sauna. We recommend things that are going to help detox the radiation from the system. So again, we're mitigating our downside. Okay, we're just using what we know and trying to mitigate the downside. So we talked about the multiple x-rays and just generally the overwhelming effect of these ionizing and non-ionizing radiations. So when they need it, we make sure their body's healthy and we give them things that are going to offset it. All right. So we also use a product I just talked about: SOD, Epsom salt baths, enemas for liver support, oxygen therapy, red light therapy when a patient is undergoing either x-rays or CAT scans or things like that. So again, gang, there's strategies. There's always an answer as to what can be done to mitigate your downside. I argue all the time that you just are not going to get that over here. You're going to get that one chapter. We're trying to give you these 29 other chapters in every way we possibly can. So Israel once had the highest breast cancer mortality rates in the world within a few years of banning certain pesticides, right? In the early 70s, breast cancer deaths dropped 8%. So again, we're not separate from our environment. We're one and the same. So what we have to do strategically is go, okay, how can I lower my exposure? But then I'm going to give you some tips. How do I support my liver? How do I detox on a daily basis? So I'll give you some strategies there that I follow religiously. Okay, behavioral toxicity, adverse behavioral change produced by psychotropic drugs, insomnia, sedation, impaired psychomotor activity, or changes in mental status, right? So that's your behavioral toxicity. All right. Now, so we made some I think an important understanding, if you will, of how many toxins that we're exposed to. I'll tell you where they come from. They're going to come from those things that we talked about. They're going to come from things you put on your skin, in your hair, the water that we're exposed to with the high levels of chlorine in them, right? We're just seeing it in the environment, gasoline additives, the carbon footprint, you name it. We're getting it from everywhere. So we're overloaded, number one. And then if we're not taking care of ourselves in general, then the overload is going to be so high that our body and our liver cannot process it, right? So let's talk about, and I'll give you this. This slide's really good, but it's a little complex. So I'm gonna make it easy. When we have toxins, they come in and they are fat soluble. And in phase one liver detox, they'll talk mainly about two phases of liver detoxification. The one phase, we call it subtraction. What has to happen is these fat soluble toxins we have to remove things from them. There's enzymes that are produced that remove things from the toxins. And that's called subtraction. Okay. And then in phase two, we have to do conjugation or addition. We have to add things to them to make sure that they can be removed from the body. Okay. So it gets complicated with all these different, the oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis. We're not going to go into that because I don't think it's relevant for you to understand it. I think what the understanding is what phase one is, where basically toxins need to go from fat soluble and then be converted to water soluble form so they can be excreted by urine or bile or stool, right? So we need certain things and nutrients in our body to be able to do that. So your B vitamins are the most critical in the ability of your liver to detox. And then folic acid, right? Glutathione and flavonoids. Now, I have to tell you, glutathione, remember, with cancer patients, we have to be careful about glutathione because if I have, studies show, I should say, glutathione can be used by the body, cancer cells, to protect themselves. So Dr. Keneally, her stance right now is until we know a little bit more, we don't want to use glutathione, but it is the body's most powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. Okay. So it's very important for phase one liver detox, which creates, again, something called subtraction. It takes things away from the toxins and makes them even a little bit more toxic, actually. But then it has to be quickly passed to phase two, where they add things to them. The liver's going to add conjugates to these toxins to make them more water soluble so they can be excreted from the body. So it's kind of like, think about this. If I'm a conveyor belt, right? You ever see, I remember watching the replay of I Love Lucy, right? I'm dating myself, but it's a replay. I didn't see it live or firsthand. But anyway, the conveyor belt, she's on this conveyor belt and there's, I think chocolates, right? And they're coming down the conveyor belt. And you've all seen this. And she gets backed up. They're going too fast. So she gets backed up, which doesn't allow her to take the chocolates and put them in the box properly, right? And package them properly. That's kind of like your liver being overwhelmed with toxins. They're coming too fast. There's too many of them. And then we can't get them packaged properly, phase two, and excreted from the body. So they build up. And when they build up, they overflow into our bloodstream and then get trapped into our tissues. And when they get trapped into our tissues, and there's too many of them, they become a foreign invader to the body, meaning it's an antigen. If I have a toxin overload or I have bacteria, it doesn't matter. The human body's going to look at it and say, I don't know what that is. I'm going to attack it. And then when there's the attack, I start getting too much gasoline thrown on my inflammatory fire. And when I have this overload of inflammation in the body, that's when the whole free radical damage, oxidative stress occurs, which damages those cells and they replicate out of control, right? So I don't want to be too nerdy with the liver part, but I do want you to understand the need for making sure we're aware of what toxins and lowering them if we can, and then supporting these phases of detoxification using B vitamins and folic acid and things like that. And in phase two, you're going to need certain amino acids, right? It lists them there. You're going to need your cysteines and your choline, your taurines and your glycines and things like that. And you're going to need your sulfur-based, like MSM is really, really good, right? Superoxide dismutase is really good. So when you go through, if you're ever on a liver detox, right, quote unquote, they're giving you things, whether it's botanicals, herbs, or specific supplements or vitamins and minerals. What they're giving you is support to phase one and support to phase two. So as these toxins are coming in, they're being packaged properly so we can excrete them from the body. Okay. And they use these supplements, vitamins, and minerals in order to support better phase 1 and phase 2 detox. Okay. So I thought the conveyor belt analogy was relevant. It's like too many are coming in, they're coming too fast. The person at the end can't stack them and box them and package them to get rid of them out of the manufacturing plant or the conveyor belt plant. And all of a sudden, I have all these things backing up and they start leaking into our system. Okay. So I think I hopefully that makes some sense without getting too nerdy where you're like, whoa, this is too much for me. But just think, liver is all about the conveyor belt. If I have too many toxins and they go too fast, somebody at the end of it trying to box them is going to get overwhelmed and they're going to start backing up. When they do that, they get shunted into the bloodstream, into your tissues, and now they become foreign invader, which is fuel to that fire. Okay, so that's a biggie. All right, now we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to make sure you understood this whole fire thing, right? So if I have toxins, and in this case, this slide right here shows leaky gut, right? If I have leaky gut and I have toxin exposure and I have candida infections and I have, say, high Epstein-Barr, all of a sudden in the pillar 4, the causes, I have 4 things that are going to tax my immune system. And so what you'll see over here, gang, is this, they call it an NFKB, nuclear factor K beta amplifying loop. You're going to see cytokines increase, which are inflammatory proteins. So if I get elevated inflammatory proteins, right, it's going to start causing my immune system to go haywire. Because if you look here at this green cell called a T regulatory cell, your immune system starts to get confused. So this T regulatory cell is what we call a traffic cop to the immune system. Okay, it controls your T cells and your B cells, known as the Th1 and Th2 pathway. It controls your nitric oxide pathways, etc. So if I have too much inflammation, it's going to cause this T regulatory cell to become confused. So think of it like a traffic cop. The traffic cop should, if I see a toxin or I see an infection, it should say, that's foreign. Let me send the T cells over to it. And the T cells, if it's an infection, can basically help the immune system stifle the infection to where enough of the immune system can get on top of it and we knock it out, right? And then when that's done, the T regulatory cell brings the T cells back down. And then it'll send the Th2 pathway or the B cells to tag the foreign invader, right? So again, say I have a virus, T cells go up, T regulatory cell or traffic cop promotes T cell production, right? It releases the army. We kill off the virus. The T regulatory cell brings the T cells back down because there's no need for them anymore, right? And then it releases B cells, and the B cells go and tag the foreign invader for future recognition, right? That's how this thing works. Well, if I'm overloaded because I have toxins and infections and parasites and candida, right, and heavy metals, all that's happening is I'm nonstop having an immune response, having inflammation. And what's going to happen to this T regulatory cell? It's going to get drunk and it's no longer going to direct traffic properly. So what happens is I get too many T cells, not enough B cells. My Th17 or nitric oxide pathways are dysregulated. And all of a sudden, my immune system gets so confused that maybe I attack the good stuff like autoimmunity and I start leaving the bad stuff go because I can't identify it anymore because I'm so confused. That's kind of what happens when you have too many toxins and too many infections and so forth in the body. It starts to create immune dysregulation where your immune system no longer recognizes the good guys versus the bad guys. It doesn't know what to do. So it can let those bad guys through, okay? And that starts to develop cancer, right? Then you get into, like we talked about before, we get into the concept of fuel, which are the causes, creating the fire, which I just explained, which is the inflammatory fire, immune dysregulation, which I just explained, free radicals, oxidative stress, right? Damage to the DNA and the genes of the cell. Old and damaged cells don't go through cell death called apoptosis because the genes were damaged that control that. And then we have damaged cells that replicate out of control, which is cancer. So if I go up here to the fuels, right, that's everything that we talk about in pillar number 4, which are the causes. Tonight, it was all about the toxins that can create a fuel to the fire and emphasize the importance of detox. So most of you coming in right away, right? What is one thing I know Keneally and the other doctors want you to do? They put down the 21-day detox. Gang, this is why. It's something that you can do at home. It's something that you can do on your own that can start the process of healing with one of the most major contributors to potentially your cancer diagnosis, right? So always a good idea with that. So hopefully, gang, let me see where we're at. Yeah, almost. So hopefully that makes some sense, right? As to why or the overload of toxins, where they come from, and then what happens in the liver. The conveyor belt analogy is the best one I can give you. And then what we need to do to support it, right? So the 21-day detox, as an example, and I'm not here to promote it, I'm just using it as a reference. The 21-day detox is going to have all those different phase 1 and phase 2 detox supplements and minerals and vitamins. Plus, it's going to have binders that when you do a detox, we want to bind the toxins that allow them to move out of the system. So it's going to have those binders in them as well. So if you ever, some of you are so astute and acute knowledge-wise on detox and things like that, you hear of chelation, right? So chelation is a major form of detoxification. But what happened years ago with chelation is it went too fast. We did it too aggressively, flushed all these toxins into the system, and then didn't have binders that could bind the toxins and get rid of them, right? So when you're flushing toxins out of the system and don't have binders, what's going to happen is they have to go somewhere. So they're going to redistribute in tissues. So, I remember reading about studies about autistic kids that got worse after chelation, and read about patients that were trying to detox got significantly worse. And the reason being is what happened. They went too aggressive. Their detox pathways probably weren't working because of those genetic mutations. Their bowels and their gut wasn't healthy. And that's something I'll talk about in a second. And then they didn't have binders. So all that happened is we flushed these toxins and they redistributed in different parts of the body. The brain is one of the areas that will do that, right? So again, I just thought I'd throw that in there because I always heard that and I didn't understand why it would happen, but now I totally understand. So when we do detoxification, we have to have the right tools, and binders are one of them. The other part that I will say, prior to doing detox, I like to make sure that the digestive system is really strong, because if I have leaky gut, for example, I need those toxins to stay in the digestive system and get pushed to the liver. But if I have leaky gut, they're going to be permeating through into the bloodstream. It's really, really difficult. So we need a good microbiome. We need good tight junctions, what they call leaky gut, right? The small intestine wall. We need that to be really secure. We need good microbiome, and we need to make sure there's not a lot of infections in the gut before we proceed. Now, some of you, if you were recommended a detox right away, the doctors evaluate that and they feel like, okay, I feel like this is pretty good based on symptoms, so we'll go right into a detox process. So I evaluated, the other doctors evaluated. So again, if you were given the detox without going through, say, gut health overall, it's because they evaluated your symptoms and felt like your gut was strong enough to be able to handle it. So I just wanted to mention that. But again, making sure adrenals are good, making sure your gut is good, making sure your thyroid is good are really good steps to take prior to doing some detoxification. Okay. So hopefully that summary makes sense as far as how toxins and chemicals and heavy metals can lead to cancer. It's all related to inflammation, immune dysregulation, and that free radical damage. That's the bottom line. Okay. So some of the things that we like to do from a testing standpoint to make sure are and we talked about this in the class with infections, but the bioenergetic testing with Molly, very helpful. Dr. Bales can do clinical testing with the Firefly. The organic acid test. So GPL, gang, is Great Plains Laboratory. Great Plains is a really good lab that does organic acid test. They do mycotoxin testing, 172 172 non-metal toxins are tested in that GPL toxin profile. Great test, right? We run that all the time. Your mycotoxin is the mold toxins, the mycotoxins that occur. There's about 40 mycotoxins from 11 main species of mold. I like to test those as well. The glyphosates, right? That's the weed killer, the Roundup that's sprayed on grains. That's a biggie. We can do things through LabCorp that really help us, whether it's some heavy metal tests and things like that we could use. Stool ecology, I'm big on the gut. So I like to use a stool ecology to see if there's infections or microbiome issues or inflammation in the gut, etc. So I think that's a good one. And then your doctor's data heavy metal test, which, there might be some better ones out there, but I like this one because they'll give you a chelator. They'll do some chelation. They want to provoke. It's called a provocative test. They want to provoke or start to leak some of these toxins, chemicals that are in your tissues into your bloodstream. And then they have you collect urine for about 6 to 8 hours afterwards. And again, it's provoking the toxins from leaving or chemicals from leaving your tissues and then collected in the urine. So they provoke it. And I think that's a pretty good test overall as well. So there's a lot of different things that we could do. And with each individual, I was telling somebody this yesterday, and I actually do when I meet with all the new patients, is tell them pillar 4, right, which are the causes, peeling back the layers of the onion as to what created this cancer potentially, and the inflammatory response and etc., is like eating an elephant. It's like one bite at a time, right? We can't do it all at once. So what I like to do is start making a checklist for the patient of what things we want to start looking at. And I do it based on their symptoms, right? What they're telling me. A lot of patients, I will be brutally honest, I start a lot with hormones and cortisol because the stress response from the feedback that I get is probably, a major contributor. So I start there. And then if they say, yeah, I've had chronic fatigue, chronic pain, maybe I'm nasally a lot, I will start to do mycotoxin and chemical toxin testing. We'll start to look at infections. The point I'll make is the order in which we start testing personally is dependent upon your symptoms and what your feedback is. And that's what I start to get into in the functional med world is pillar 4 with the causes and how to prioritize them. Because here's the thing, and you all know this, and this is why a lot of people come see me, is the different clinicians here are doing their job. They're finding things and they're saying, we want you to do this. But then you're doing this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden your supplement list is this long and you're overwhelmed and you're taking too much stuff. So that's where I have to come in and help out with prioritizing and thinking, look, pillar 4, as long as we're working on pillar 2, the starve, kill, oxidate, alkalize phase, and we're boosting your immune system, we have time to uncover the layers of the onion, right? Getting you healthy again and finding a lot of these things and then removing them may take, honestly, it may take 6 months, 12 months, year and a half. I don't know. It just depends on how much stuff is going on. But pillar 4 is one, again, I don't want to be redundant here, but is one of those that we can eat the elephant one bite at a time. So I'm big on not complicating it with 5 different protocols. I like to go, all right, if we're working on the gut, let's work on the gut for a few months and then retest it. All right, it's looking clean and you can handle something else. Then let's work on this. And then let's work on your toxins and let's start testing your this. And we can work slowly through the process. So without getting overwhelmed, I just want to let you know that the order is based on priority, which is based on your feedback in the history, in the examination process and me meeting with you and the doctors as well. And then it's prioritizing based on that feedback. And we just go hopefully one thing at a time. But again, a lot of clinicians are giving you a lot of things. So I have to, if you get overwhelmed that way, come see me. We'll go step by step through what I think is most important and we'll prioritize. And I'll give you that concept of Rome wasn't built in a day. So even though they gave you all this stuff, some people are like, I have to do it all to heal. Well, some things you do have to be that aggressive with, but pillar 4 is one of those things that we can take time to clean it up, as long as they're doing the kill, starve, oxygenate, alkalize phase, which is pillar 2, and we're boosting your immune system. Those, the kill phase and the starve phase are probably the top 2 priorities in the entire 4-pillar plan. How are we killing these cells, right? So as long as we have that covered, we have time. Hopefully that makes sense, gang. So yeah, so that's the gist of it. Okay, you've got all these toxins, they're way too much. The conveyor belt analogy is relevant. There's too many coming in. Our livers aren't supported properly, and then on this side, the person trying to package all the goodies up, if you will, can't, because the conveyor belt's overloaded and pushing too many down. And then when phase 2 can't happen, which is the packager, which is Lucy, right? That's phase 2. When she can't package them properly, they just start overflowing, and that's when they get into the system, creating a lot of that cellular damage. So really important to help with liver detox. There's a product that I like to use, right? There's a bunch of them. So if you're not going to go through a full 7, 14, 21 day detox regimen, because maybe you feel like, I don't know, you don't need it, it's too much. I have a lot of patients that are too thin, to be honest with you, to go through a 21 day, because they might lose too much weight, and I don't want that either. So I recommend a product, and you can look into it, called Clearvite. Again, I'm not really here to promote products. I want to teach you, but I like this product, and I use it probably 3 or 4 times a week. It's called Clearvite. It's from Apex Energetics. Now, a company called Metagenics has a product called Ultra Clear, and then there's Metaclear from Thorne. I might recommend that one too. But Clearvite has different forms of proteins in them. Like each different product could have pea protein, one could have collagen protein, etc. So, but what it does is has all the things that I talked about that are needed in phase 1, all your B vitamins, all your folate. It has your different phase 1 conjugates, and then it has all your phase 2 conjugates as well, that will help get fat soluble toxins, the water soluble toxins, and clear them from the body. Okay, so Clearvite CLA from Apex Energetics is one that I highly recommend. I probably said this multiple times. My main 3 things that I work on religiously for years is, number 1, I take a bunch of anti-inflammatories. I take my curcumin, my resveratrol, I take my vitamin D, high level of D, probably 10K a day. I take my omega-3s. I'll take some nitric oxide support, and then I do glutathione. Remember the caveat with glutathione in cancer. So those are my go-tos, my staples. Any athlete I have, any person that's just trying to do wellness, those are my go-tos, right? Resveratrol, curcumin, turmeric, vitamin D, glutathione, and omega-3s, and maybe a little nitric oxide support. The second thing I do is I support my gut consistently, and I do my probiotics, I do gut biome, and I do some things to make sure digestively I'm helped out with enzymes. So now, do I do all those every day? No, I probably do them 2-3 times a week, but I've done them for years. So I use the analogy of the tortoise versus the hare. Okay. Instead of the hare at this point, I'm the tortoise. I just go about 20 miles an hour, maybe 15 miles an hour. If you're healing though and trying to clean up, you might have to go 100 miles an hour. So just the caveat. And then the final thing that I do is that Clearvite. I take 2 scoops of that. It's a powder. I mix it in with my smoothie, probably 3 or 4 times a week. I have for years, so I can support phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox, simply because there's so many of these toxins. So that's my wellness regimen, along with my workouts 4 or 5 times a week, and my water intake, and I get really good sleep, right? I have a plan, I have a formula, and I follow it pretty religiously. But again, the inflammation, gut, and liver are my big rocks that I focus on. I only threw that in there because of the amount of toxins in our system, to show you that these things can be done on an ongoing basis without necessarily having to do a full 21-day or 14-day detox routine. Okay, so all right, gang. I know that's a lot. Let's see if we can. I know I was on time. It's one of these days. So bioidentical hormones, triple negative breast cancer, 63 stop them, but now having hot flashes at night, trouble sleeping. Yeah. So Karen asked about hormone replacement therapy. So it depends on a lot of factors, but we want to evaluate it, because if you start blocking the estrogens, you get low on estrogen, progesterone starts to go down, we're going to get a lot of symptoms, and function will be affected. So I can't say that specifically, Karen, what we would do with that, because I think I would need more information, and so would the doctors here. So I can't give you like, hey, would I do this or would I do that? I think I need more information to be able to tell you that. Can you repeat the name of the herb that can be a healthy substitute for tamoxifen? Yes. So the tamoxifen replacement would be myomin, myomin. And again, that depends. We're not going to blanket say you should do that, but it is a replacement that, if the right parameters are in place, could be used. And the other one's DIM, D-I-M, long name, but if you Google DIM, DIM will help get excess estrogens, especially xenoestrogens, and push them down the liver detox pathways. So let's see. Love your take on EMFs from air purifiers with smart dots help to keep EMFs at bay. Yes. Thinking about a purifier to help with seasonal allergies. Yes. I think the in that one, Joanne, I think the air purifier far outweighs the benefits than the negative of EMFs from it. So for sure. Airplane mode, that's a great one. And anything plugged in, wall sockets, yep. I don't want to trade air toxins for EMFs. No, you're better off purifying the air. There's very little EMFs that will come from that. So I think your benefit outweighs the risk there. One of the things, let's see, well, we will touch on EMFs and do a full series on it in a probably a couple weeks. I want to do low dose chemo next week, maybe, if not EMFs. I'm not sure. Let's see. Well, Carrie, yep, you got it. I hope this helps. I really do. I think over the years, my story with my cancer, my dad's cancer, my family's cancer. I mean, it's kind of rampant. So as I've learned, I go, oh my gosh, people have to know this, right? Again, I always go back to the conventional, which can be good, but it's incomplete, and we're not getting taught it. Just like the pandemic, we should have been taught a lot better, and we weren't. It could have done a lot of good for a lot of people. So I'll keep my mouth shut on that. Okay, can poor oral health cause head and neck cancers? Without question. So when we have head and neck cancers, HPV is a big one, and then oral cavity is a huge one. So anything close here, right, to the head and neck, we want to start checking out. So bioidentical dentistry, that's one of the highest priorities we have for people, is to go see a bioidentical dentist. So in order to remove heavy metals, do you ever use EDTA chelation or DMSA? We do, Norman. We might do that. It depends on the levels and then the severity and the symptoms. So it's a great question. Our aggressiveness depends on the presentation. It's the same like for Epstein-Barr. People ask me about Epstein-Barr all the time. What do we do about it? Well, it depends on, do we think it's a major catalyst to what's going on in the body as to how aggressive and how quick we start to lower those antibodies. Same thing. But yes, we will do EDTA chelation, DMSA for sure. All right, so let's see. Which of these toxins do you see in Orange County, assuming you're treating in Dr. Keneally's office? Geez, look, gosh, you're exposed. I mean, any and all of them are potential, right? Any and all of them. So Rachel, it's like we want to be aware that there's a lot of them and there's an overload. The main thing that I would tell you is, okay, do the best you can to limit your exposure, but then support your liver for sure. That's a biggie that I talk about. I saw something, a slide about sodium dioxide before the radiation toxicity slides. Yeah, I know. Silicon, let's see, some supplements. Is it a toxin? Yeah, yeah, it's not. Yeah, high levels, low levels. Again, same thing. Some of the sodium dioxides at high levels can be a problem, but yeah, I mean, anything like that that's man-made is going to be something that could be detrimental. We just got to be careful and keep our levels super low. Any tests they run reflect extreme EMF exposure, like living by extremely high voltage cell tower. Only thing that we do is some of the equipment that can test the level of EMFs. That's the best thing I could tell you. And if they're high, then we want to limit your amount of EMF exposure for sure by changing as much as we can, which again, Marley, we'll get into it either next week or the week after. Stay away from B12 because it causes cancer. Karen, I've never heard of that. I'll ask Dr. Keneally, but B12 is something that we use extensively. But again, we test for it though too. We see where it is level wise. NAC okay for cancer patients? Yep. Yes. Great question, Deborah. We like to use NAC, vitamin C, alpha lipoic acid as precursors to boost your levels of glutathione. So we'll do it naturally, but we don't want to give exogenous glutathione for our cancer patients, if that makes sense. Repeat the healthy substitute for tamoxifen, that's Myomin. Yep. Is it possible to have the copy of the messages in the chat? You know what? I'm not sure. I think. I'll check on that. Are you going to have a replay of this excellent presentation? If yes, when? The replay will be sent. It's usually sent the next day via email, so be on the lookout for that for sure. Candida, Karen, Candida is I'm going to get the gut better, so I'm going to get my microbiome healthy, right? I'm going to help with leaky gut. I call it the 5 R's, and then I might use something called HU58 Megaspore probiotic, but I test for these first. And then the Candicid forte and something called acetaldehyde or biocidin. One to get rid of the endotoxins, one to get rid of the candida. So, but again, I tend to test the gut first and then see what it needs and then go through that process of figuring out. Detox, get rid of lots of gadolinium. Yeah, 21-day, yes, it can help, Susan, to get rid of that. Obviously from the scans, right? So the SOD, like the Clearvite's good on a daily basis. That 21-day would help. Superoxide dismutase, really good. C60 is really good. And then your Epsom salt baths will help get rid of that gadolinium. Okay. Is it okay to do coffee enemas? You have leaky gut. Yeah, I wouldn't do them 5, 6, 7 days a week. I'd do them a few days a week and really work on the gut simultaneously regarding the coffee enema question. All right, Susan, if it's from breast MRIs, do most likely 2002 as they used magnets. I also have an MTHFR mutation, 22 copies. Yeah, okay. It is from breast MRIs done. Yeah. Yeah, true. That's true, Susan. And yeah, the MTHFR mutation, the double, right, is definitely something that, your B12s, B9s, we want to keep an eye on your homocysteine. We want to look at those different pathways to make sure that your upstream is being protected. Generally covered. What test does health insurance generally cover? Good question. Anytime I recommend a test, this is the best answer I can give, Barbara. On the sheet, it'll say self-pay, insurance pay, credit card information, all that. I always tell the patient, when I give you the kit, call the center, the lab, and just find out what's covered, what's not covered, because insurances vary on what they cover, and then the labs vary on what they'll cover. So it's hard to say which are covered because of the insurance variable there. Chronic toxicity causes severe nausea and very severe sickness. Dark brown, yeah, dark brown. Where is it coming from? Now, when you say severe nausea and very severe sickness, dark brown color, read it. Dark brown stool. I'm not sure, because if it's dark brown stool, it's probably bile. Dr. Seaman, more of my question, please explain. Yeah, absolutely. Severe nausea, severe sickness. There's something going on in your body, usually toxicity, without question. So we would start to work down with somebody like yourself, start down the pathway of looking at the GPL 172 toxins. We would start looking at mycotoxins. I might even, with yours, with the severe nausea and severe sickness, I would start looking into Lyme's disease, all these different things that if we see severe patients, we know that something like that's going on. Low cost labs. So Deborah, when we do labs here, we're contracted via LabCorp, right? We're contracted with them and we give them a lot of business, so they give us discounted rates. So we have a contract with LabCorp that gives us discounted rates if they're done here. But anywhere else, low cost labs, I'm not familiar with personally. Sorry about that. Thin and frail, not good candidates per provoked urine and heavy metal testing. If this person has 16 amalgams removed, is still chronically fatigued, would you go ahead and do the provoked heavy metal test or something else for this person? So thin and frail, yeah, I don't know that I do the provocative test for heavy metal. And then if they had the amalgams removed and still chronically ill, I would probably do the GPL test, the mycotoxin test. I would start to look at, the inflammatory markers. Yes, something's going on there. There's some major fuel to the fire or fuels to the fire that's going on that's creating this person being chronically fatigued. So we've got to figure out, and when we get into fatigue, I would do the DNA testing to see, or the genetic testing to see if there's mutations. I would do the toxins. I would do the mycotoxins. I would do Lyme's. I would start getting into that for sure. Can you please type the product from Epigenetics? Let's see if I can do that. I'll say it this way. It's Ultra, right? Like Ultraman, Ultra, ULTRA, clear, CLEAR, Ultra Clear. Sorry. All right, at 102 pounds, maybe this is too long. From what 102 pounds, Susan, the 21 days, I'd have a hard time, promoting that with you right now if they're 102 pounds, just because there's a chance, because of the restrictedness of the diet initially, that you'll lose weight. And I don't think that's a good idea. We have to be pragmatic about it, right? And I don't know that I would do that for sure. So ion biome cause tumors to grow. I have so many people on ion biome. I can't imagine how that would happen, and I have no evidence of that. So, and Liliana's here. She said no.
Especially it doesn't have any glutamine or anything in it. So.
No, exactly. So good point. So ion biome doesn't have glutamine. It doesn't have any of the things that are known to promote, which is why we promote ion biome with our cancer patients. Yes. So do you accept patients from Canada? Yes, we accept patients from all over the world. We have, probably every country's represented, right? So yes, all over the world. Type of water for filtering or structuring, or great portable travel one that filters out a lot of yuck. Marley, I like, what's the one that we always...
The Echo that we have here for the house one.
The Echo, and then the Berkey.
Yeah, and I think there's one that's called the Aqua Cure too, that is a home unit, you can travel with it.
Echo is good.
Yeah.
Echo is good for home. And then the Berkey filters, I love. They pretty much get 99% of the junk out. They have 2 charcoal filters up top, and then of course the filters at the bottom, but they also have a travel one. So Berkey, I believe it's Burky, right?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. All right. So grounding mats, of course. Yeah. Very good, Deborah. Grounding mats are great. I bet you Lil has some, right?
I do.
Product Epigenetics 21-day detox. Epigenetics is Ultra Clear, Rolla. Ultra Clear, that's one of them. Clear Bite's another. And then, of course, MetaClear is another by Thorne. Panic attacks and anxiety, especially when driving. What can I do? All right, Aslan. So if you have panic attacks while driving, most likely your adrenal glands are very taxed. So most likely. And then there's some probably hormonal things going on. But then again, we might have to look at the neurotransmitters or the genotypes, your gene mutations as well. So gene mutations, adrenals for sure, and then neurotransmitters like GABA. So those 3 things, we could probably figure that out.
And breath work.
Yeah, that's right. What is it?
breath work.
Breath work. Yeah. What's the one that Tanner likes?
Hoffman,
Hoffman. Yeah. What is it?
the Hoffman.
Hoffman. Yeah. So breath work as
But,
well.
Yeah, maybe box breathing will be a little bit
Box
better when I
breathing,
have
yeah.
that kind of, anxiety, because I
Yeah.
don't want to hyperventilate.
Exactly. Melatonin in high levels as an antioxidant suppository. I don't see any problems with that at all. Reputable companies to purchase supplements. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of the companies, unfortunately, you have to be a healthcare provider to purchase them, right? So if you're a patient here, the store that we have a full store downstairs that has Apex and Thorne and Standard Process and all the top companies that
I have 200 companies.
yeah, we probably have 200 companies down there, Lil said. All right, so let's see, astaxanthin. Yeah, how do you say it? Is that astaxanthin, right?
Yeah, after that.
Yeah, I can never pronounce that.
I know, it's a tongue twister.
However, phenomenal for antioxidant. How effective is HMD in detoxing metals? Yeah, HMD drops pretty good.
I like that a lot. It's very easy on the system.
It is.
Homeopathic remedy.
Easy on the system, has chlorella in it, which is a nice binder. And then we actually give a little more chlorella, I do anyway, with HMD drops. And again, well, it's all dependent upon how much you have in your system. If it's not much, I think the HMD drops is a really good tool. If it's a lot,
Binder HMD good too.
it's exactly like a chlorella or a cilantro or something like that. All right, so let's see. Yeah, but excellent blood markers. There's like A1C. Also, B12. B2 high AFP. Yeah, I mean, it could. It could, Charlotte, it could. But there's probably some pathway issues going on there. I go back to the MTHFR and things like that. We'd probably have to look at that. Structured water, can we use instead of Berkey water? Structured water. What about structured water? Can we use it instead of Berkey water? Yeah, Berkey is BRKY. Yeah, I don't see why not, right?
Yeah.
No problem. Herpes virus contribute to cancer, potentially, right, as one factor, right? So, but you said contribute. So yeah, anytime you have an excess viral load, you're going to have an immune system that's going to overwork trying to regulate it, right? And usually if those antibodies and viruses are high, your immune system has other things that it's trying to work on, and it's distracted. That's a great way to put it. So we would probably look at the big picture on that one for sure. Resveratrol recommendation as far as brand, I love Apex. Perfectly Healthy Store here has one, but Apex is one of the better ones, I think. Apex Energetics has a good resveratrol. Mycotoxin test by GPL. Yeah, I love mycotoxin from GPL, Lisa, for sure. All right, gang, that is the questions, or those are the questions. Thank you very much. I'm going to have Lil come on. She wanted to talk to you real quick. And then be in the lookout. We might start switching back to 2 times a week. I'm not sure.
2 times a month.
2 times a month. But we'll let you know. We'll always send emails and reminders and things like that. Okay. So again, any inquiries for cancer, if you have active cancer, your 949-867-6374 number is the one to call. And that would be Dana handling that. That's the center, a Cancer Center for Healing website. If it's a wellness patient, prevention patient, or preventing reoccurrence, you're on the center side, 949-867-6419 and cfnmedicine.com. And then the supplement store, 949-997-0821. You've seen that up here for a while. And then the shop, cfnmedicine.com. Okay, so I just always want to remind you, because we get a ton of calls the next day. So I want to make sure I steer you in the right direction.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, Lil.
All right. So just for a second, I wanted to come in because I wanted to invite you guys all to a free webinar that I'm going to be doing on May 19th. And so it is a very comprehensive program that I have. It took me 3 years to put together. So it's like getting a PhD in how to live your life, what you eat, how you move, how you love, how you think, how you detox. But it's all through a platform that we use. So you could do it to the convenience of your home. And so there is going to be, one went out yesterday, an invitation on the newsletter that we had, was kind of at the bottom. So if you get this, I would love to have you join the webinar on May 19th. It's going to be at 7 p.m. And that way you can kind of just hear what it's all about, see if it's a fit for you. A lot of you don't live here. And so this is why I created this course in regards of the 6 pillars of the keto platform on how to live your life. So anyway, I just wanted to just mention that. So Dr. Roney gave me a few minutes of the time here. And so hope you guys have a great evening, and I hope you guys learned a lot tonight.
And that webinar is fantastic, gang. So I'm going to tell you, it's Lil is, she put it together. It's very structured. You know, I'm a big fan of plans, right? It's a very good plan, step by step, and it's broken down to very, no pun intended, but digestible information.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so that one, I would definitely check it out. Highly, highly recommend.
Yeah, you'll love it. There's nothing out there like it. And it's learning how to get a PhD and how to live your life. So it's everything that Dr. Roney and I would want to teach you, but it would take us a lot of hours and a lot of your time.
Yeah, so it's chunked down for you really well. So
okay,
everybody, have a great week, everybody. We may not do it next week and maybe 2 weeks, but we'll let everybody know. Okay, much love and be good. If you need anything, holler. Okay, we're here for you. Okay, bye guys.